He only placed an item in front of someone's house, but immediately he was stopped by white police officers. They demanded to inspect everything inside his shopping cart. James became nervous and tried pushing his cart away. That action inadvertently increased the officers' suspicion. They pressed James down onto the hood of their car, handcuffed him, then escorted him back to the police station. The police thought they'd just made a big achievement, but that hasty decision turned everything upside down. Just moments ago, James was trembling in a dark corner of the holding cell, but the very next second, he was sitting and eating a hamburger with the officer who had arrested him, and write an 8,000-word apology. Not only that, he also had to become James's personal chauffeur, driving him around to hand-deliver gifts to the townspeople. James was a black man. He had suffered from intellectual disabilities since birth. Although possessing the body of an adult, deep within him was the soul of a 5-year-old child. James usually wandered around town pushing a shopping cart. Every day, he collected items that others had discarded. His peculiar appearance always drew wary glances from everyone. Mothers would often pull their children away whenever they accidentally saw him. But James was used to those looks. He didn't care. Though his mind was underdeveloped, his heart still knew how to resonate with the things he loved. And his greatest passion was football. Whenever he passed by the high school football practice field, James always stopped for a long time. His eyes innocent yet passionate, staring intently at the players running on the field. It was precisely this special attention that made the football coach begin noticing him. One day, a player accidentally kicked a ball out of the practice field. James just happened to be passing by at that exact moment. The student asked James to help retrieve the ball, but James misunderstood. He thought it was a gift someone had given him. He joyfully placed the ball into his cart and walked away. The student, annoyed, ran to tell the coach, but the coach just smiled gently, saying nothing. The coach's attitude irritated the players. They decided to teach James a lesson. The next day, they pretended to be friendly and lured him into a dark room. The moment James stepped inside, they immediately shut the door, locking him in. Not only did they mock him loudly, the players also continuously slammed footballs violently against the door. Those harsh sounds echoed through the small room. At that very moment, the coach opened the door and stepped inside. He froze at the sight before him. James was huddled in the corner of the room, his face terrified, his entire body trembling violently, his hands and feet tightly bound with tape. The coach quickly moved to James's side. He gently calmed him down, then swiftly took out a small knife and cut away the tight layers of tape that bound him. As soon as he was freed, James panicked and bolted outside. He tripped at the threshold, but quickly stood back up. Without looking back, James ran into the darkness ahead, running as if escaping the most terrifying nightmare of his life. The coach silently stared at the mischievous students. He held back his anger and spoke in a low voice. "If you boys like playing so much, then tomorrow's practice will be extended, to give you plenty of time to enjoy yourselves." The next day, James still stood outside the practice field, watching the players with innocent eyes as if nothing had ever happened. The coach approached him outside the field. James immediately took out the ball from yesterday and handed it back to him. He knew the ball was the reason he had been bullied, but the coach refused to take it. Instead, he sincerely apologized to James on behalf of the entire team. He invited James onto the field to practice with the players. He also promised that no one would ever be allowed to bully him again. But James hesitated and declined. Perhaps fear still lingered in his heart. He turned away and silently pushed his cart further away. That afternoon, after the practice had ended, the coach didn't allow the players to go home right away. He made them run continuously around the field. From when the sun was still high overhead until dusk gradually fell, James continued to stand outside watching. He understood clearly. That was the coach's way of punishing them for the cruel acts they had committed against him. Not long afterward, the team entered their annual competition. Before each important match, the coach instructed all the players to close their eyes. He told them to visualize the roaring sound of cheers from the crowd as they claimed victory. Once their spirits reached their peak, they immediately charged onto the field as though they had just been freed from their shackles. Johnny was the team's star player. He performed brilliantly, scoring points continuously. The players' teamwork combined with the coach's sharp strategies quickly brought them a resounding victory. After the match ended, a victory party was organized. All the parents surrounded the coach, showering him with compliments. They were confident this year's team would make it to the finals. The next day, the team continued practicing on the field. As usual, James stood outside, attentively watching. The coach saw him, but he didn't call James onto the field immediately. He knew that would frighten James away. Instead, he had an assistant bring a bottle of water out to James. Only when he saw James accepting and drinking the water did he feel reassured. When practice ended, the coach opened the gate and stepped outside. He gently greeted James. Despite the coach's friendly inquiries, James stood silently, hesitant to say anything until he overheard the coach mentioning hamburgers in his office. James's eyes suddenly lit up. As soon as he entered the office, James' attention was immediately drawn to the radio placed on the desk. He repeated the word radio with childlike enthusiasm. The coach tried asking his name, but James kept murmuring, "Radio!" With no other choice, the coach decided to give him a new nickname. From that day onward, he would be called Radio. To gain James' trust, the coach not only bought him a large hamburger, but also gave him the radio that he cherished. After the meal, the coach personally drove James back home. Throughout the drive home, James tightly embraced the radio like a priceless treasure. Before leaving, the coach gently invited James to come help the team at practice the next day. Upon hearing the invitation, James's usually blank eyes suddenly sparkled with joy. However, James's mother looked at the coach with doubt and suspicion. She knew very well James had often been exploited and bullied by others. She didn't believe that a white man could genuinely be so kind-hearted and sincere. The next day, right on time, James arrived at the practice field very early. The coach announced to the entire team, from now on, James would become the team's official assistant. He also emphasized clearly, despite the unhappy incidents in the past, from this moment forward, no one was permitted to bully James ever again. Everyone silently nodded in agreement. Finally, James officially stepped onto the football field he'd always dreamed of. His job was simply picking up balls and helping with minor tasks, yet his face was always radiant with joy. Even so, deep inside, some players still secretly felt annoyed and jealous of James. Taking advantage of moments when the coach wasn't paying attention, they began playing tricks on him, sometimes intentionally dropping balls from his hands, other times deliberately bumping into James with their training pads. Occasionally, even pretending to practice, then suddenly rushing at James. But James never took any of these actions personally. Each day, he patiently tidied up the practice field carefully. He also enthusiastically shouted cheers and slogans to encourage the team. James always seriously imitated every movement the coach demonstrated. Gradually, over time, the players began changing their perception of him. No one caused James any trouble anymore. The relationship between James and the team gradually became closer. He truly became part of the team, part of the collective.
In every match, James always stood closely beside the coach. His eyes attentively followed every minor movement on the field. Whenever he had the opportunity, he quickly ran onto the field, loudly shouting cheers to encourage each player. James frequently joined the fans in the stands, boosting the team's morale and spirit. He never hesitated to cheer loudly. He remembered every moment of the team's victories and defeats. Even during the most difficult matches, when the players lowered their heads in defeat, James always approached them, comforting and encouraging them sincerely from his heart. His innocent support often revived the team's fighting spirit. One day, the match situation turned extremely unfavorable. The players appeared ready to give up, but James' enthusiasm unexpectedly inspired the entire team. They immediately stood up and fought harder, completely reversing the situation. In the stands, spectators excitedly chanted James's name together. But just when everything seemed positive, complaints began emerging from some parents. They expressed frustration toward the coach. According to them, he had turned a formerly serious football team into a joke. A mentally impaired black man like James should never have been allowed on the football field. They believed the coach was just using him as a source of entertainment. The coach didn't respond to those criticisms. Instead, he decided to learn more deeply about James. He drove to meet James's mother. He wanted to understand clearly about the condition James suffered from. James's mother explained, even doctors couldn't precisely diagnose his condition. They simply described him as intellectually disabled since birth. James's father had passed away early. alone, she worked over 12 hours a day to support their family. Due to her busy schedule, she had almost no time to care properly for James. Every day, she lived in constant anxiety, afraid James would wander and get arrested again for some strange reason. But despite everything, she always believed her son was inherently good. Simply no one had taken the time to truly understand him yet. Hearing James's mother share these sincere thoughts, the coach didn't say anything further. He remained silent. But deep inside, he now had a clear answer. He himself would be the one to dedicate that time to James. He would try his best to understand and protect him. That day, the team was preparing to leave for an away game. All of the players were ready to board the bus. But at that exact moment, the principal unexpectedly approached the coach. He sternly explained, James was neither a student of the school nor a normal person. If James had a sudden health issue, such as a seizure or fainted on the bus, the school would be unable to accept responsibility. For this reason, James wasn't allowed to accompany the team. The principal also expressed doubt, questioning whether the coach genuinely wanted to help James or simply considered him a lucky charm for the team. Faced with these harsh doubts, the coach remained silent, offering no response. As James prepared to step onto the bus, the coach gently stopped him, his voice lowered, filled with regret. "I'm sorry, James. You can't join the team this time." James stood frozen. He didn't understand what was happening. His eyes became blank. His body stiffened. The coach could say nothing more except a quiet apology. Then he silently turned and boarded the bus. The bus slowly drove away, but James refused to miss any updates about the team. He hurriedly grabbed his beloved radio. Running alone to the practice field in the pouring rain, he turned the radio on, pressing it close to his ear to hear every detail of the game, as if he himself was standing alongside the team. He awkwardly imitated each move described on the radio. He ran forward, accelerated, jumped, then attempted a kick, but he slipped and fell on the wet ground. Meanwhile, the team playing far away also suffered a bitter defeat. James knelt down in the rain, in pain, disappointed, his tears falling endlessly. He loved football. He loved the team, and he loved the coach, those who had given him a new sense of happiness and purpose. But at that moment, James was completely alone, in the cold. To compensate for the disappointment and heartbreak James had endured, the coach later took him out to a restaurant. He invited James to a lavish meal. Moreover, he arranged for James to lead the team onto the field in the next game.
Hearing the thunderous cheers from the stands, James was overwhelmed with emotion. But because he became too excited, he accidentally shouted out the entire secret strategy the coach had just revealed to the team. With the strategy exposed, the opposing team immediately adapted their game plan. James's team was quickly overwhelmed, forced constantly into defense. Inside the locker room at halftime, the atmosphere became extremely heavy and gloomy. Johnny, the team's star player, couldn't control his frustration. He angrily shouted, "Do you all still want to play or not? I haven't even touched the ball once during this entire half." His words plunged the room into tense silence. James stood quietly for a moment, then slowly approached Johnny, holding a football in his hands. He gently handed it toward Johnny without saying a word. It was merely a simple and innocent gesture, but precisely that moment sparked something in the coach's mind. He suddenly came up with an entirely new idea to turn things around. When the second half started, the coach immediately deployed a completely different strategy. Every player seemed transformed into a new person. Johnny played explosively, continuously scoring points, leading the team from being cornered into completely dominating the game. In the end, the team successfully made a remarkable comeback, securing the most crucial victory of the season. To thank James for his inspiration and enthusiasm, as well as his silent companionship throughout the season, the coach decided to present him with the honorary game ball. It was the symbol of their team's championship. Everyone enthusiastically applauded James, but there was one person who wasn't happy: Johnny's father. He always believed James's presence was a distraction to the team. He argued that without James's interference, the team could have performed far better. He criticized James openly, believing James's existence caused the coach distraction, unable to fully focus on coaching important games. The coach didn't respond to this harsh criticisms. He remained silent,
In his mind, he recalled James's mother's words from that day. In this world, some people can never understand kindness because their hearts are filled only with selfishness and bitterness. Not long afterward, James's mother felt deeply moved upon seeing her son's image appear on the front page of the local newspaper. She felt immense pride. She had never dared to imagine James achieving something remarkable like this. Yet, contrary to his mother's happiness, James felt profoundly sad. The football season had ended. That meant he would be separated from the team, returning to his former lonely life, wandering aimlessly as before. But the coach never allowed that to happen. For him, James had long ceased to be just another stranger. James had become like a true son whom he always wished to protect. Determined, the coach approached the principal, expressing his desire for the school to officially accept James as a student. He also committed to personally caring for James. Though not fully understanding the reasons behind the coach's request, the principal offered no objection. Ultimately, James officially became a member of the school. From that day onward, whenever he had spare time, the coach spent it teaching James how to read and write. When he was busy, he assigned James the responsibility of supervising exams. James quickly adapted to school life. Each day, he cheerfully greeted everyone he encountered. His presence brightened the entire campus, filling it with joy and vitality. It seemed James's life would remain peaceful and happy. But not long afterward, another storm once again struck his life, and this time the troubles were far more serious than before. One day, the school administration held a private meeting. They expressed concerns about James attending school and living like a normal student. According to them, allowing someone with intellectual disabilities like James into the school posed numerous risks. The school wasn't a charity organization. It was a place for serious education and strict discipline. These statements put the principal in a very difficult position. He couldn't understand why the coach insisted so strongly on protecting James. He questioned why the coach devoted such special attention to a stranger, even more than to his own colleagues and other students. But the coach offered no explanations. He simply stood quietly watching James happily play basketball with his classmates, then thought about the cold faces in the meeting. A heavy feeling settled in his heart. James was no longer the frightened young man he once was. He had fully integrated into school life, happy and carefree among his new friends. If forced to leave, James would return to his past loneliness and despair. And perhaps such a setback would break him completely. Not long afterward, the entire town began preparing for the annual Christmas celebration. Knowing James's mother had to work late into the night, the coach secretly called friends and neighbors in town for help. Each person prepared a special gift specifically for James. Soon, the truck bed was completely filled with gifts. The coach's daughter also personally presented James with a gift she had prepared. She believed deeply that her father was doing the right thing, because these actions had taught many others how to care for James. But the coach gently replied, James didn't need anyone's pity.
Those words stunned his daughter. She suddenly felt hurt. For a long time, the school and the team had consumed all of her father's time and energy. Now, there was also James. It only widened the distance between father and daughter. Just as the coach was about to explain himself to his daughter, James suddenly appeared. His presence immediately silenced the coach. All his emotions turned into silence. After safely bringing James home, the coach gave him the Christmas gift he'd prepared earlier. It was a brand new radio, designed with exquisite craftsmanship and perfect sound quality. When the first melody played from the radio, James couldn't contain his excitement. He jumped to his feet, dancing clumsily throughout the room. Although awkward, James' eyes sparkled with pure joy. His heart always knew how to appreciate happiness, even from the smallest things. James's mother was deeply moved and extremely grateful to the coach. She knew clearly he was the one who had given her son a new life. Seizing the opportunity, she asked him a question that many people had wondered. There were many kind people in the world, but those with the persistence to see their kindness through to the end were rare. Why was he treating James so kindly? The coach gently looked at her without responding, because he knew clearly one thing. Love in this world was like a quiet stream. No need for words, just silently flowing to wherever it was needed. James remembered every act of kindness that people had done for him, so he decided to return that affection. Small gifts prepared personally by James filled up his familiar shopping cart. Alone, James pushed the cart throughout the town. He quietly placed each gift in front of every doorstep. But this peculiar act quickly drew the attention of the police. A black man with unusual behavior, pushing a cart filled with items through a residential area. By instinct, police assumed James was transporting stolen goods. They immediately stopped him, demanding an explanation. James panicked. He turned to flee. His panic and silence only angered the officers further. They quickly subdued James on the spot, then took him directly to the police station. And everything unfolded exactly like the very first time the story began. Just seconds before, James was trembling in the corner of a holding cell, but the very next moment, he was sitting eating a hamburger alongside the officer who had arrested him. That bizarre scene quickly appeared on the local news. The officer who had arrested him was now sitting beside him, his head bowed, diligently writing an apology letter. Not only that, he was also required to drive the police car, acting as James's personal chauffeur, delivering each small gift James had prepared to people throughout the town. Each of these journeys became a valuable lesson about kindness and tolerance. And thanks to the coach's tireless perseverance, James's life at school gradually stabilized. More and more people began to appreciate and sympathize with him. They were all touched by James's genuine sincerity and innocence. James gradually realized his own worth in this school, in this collective, through those small yet meaningful tasks. From that day forward, James's life at school continued to improve. He was entrusted with a special role in maintaining school discipline. But James wasn't like others. Whenever he discovered students breaking rules, he never scolded them, nor did he write any reports. James simply approached them gently, giving each student a warm and heartfelt hug. At the football field, James became a true assistant. At every practice session, he cheered the team on with all his strength, energetically and wholeheartedly. Equal to any player on the field, James was even assigned another special duty. He became the school's official announcer. Every lunchtime, he enthusiastically read out the day's menu for the entire school. His innocent and clumsy voice always made students burst into laughter. James's presence brought a cheerful and vibrant atmosphere to the previously quiet campus. Yet, wherever there were people who adored him, there would also inevitably be others who envied him. Johnny was one of them. Johnny disliked James's increasing popularity and attention. Deep down, Johnny felt unappreciated. He recalled the efforts he previously contributed to the team's victories, yet in the end, he wasn't the one receiving praise. Instead, it was a mentally disabled black man named James. Now, more than ever, James's popularity eclipsed even Johnny's. Johnny couldn't endure that. He decided to plan revenge. One day, Johnny approached James, telling him a teacher in the next room urgently needed his help. Hearing someone needed assistance, James immediately rushed over with all his natural enthusiasm. But when he stepped into that room, James instantly froze. This wasn't the teacher's room, but the girls' changing room. James panicked. Turning to flee, he kept repeating to himself, "Can't do that again, can't do that again." James's kindness had once again been exploited. The following day, upon learning of the incident, the coach immediately approached James to discuss it. He knew James hadn't intentionally done anything wrong. Gently, he asked James who was behind all this. But James was too gentle and kind-hearted. He absolutely refused to say anyone's name. Nevertheless, the coach didn't require a confession. He already clearly knew the culprit was Johnny. Immediately afterwards, he approached Johnny. Without waiting for an explanation, the coach announced Johnny would be banned from playing in the next match. His voice remained calm, but his eyes colder than ever. He explained that although James didn't name Johnny, Johnny's malicious actions had betrayed the trust of both himself and the entire team. But before this trouble could fade away, another tragedy suddenly struck. James's mother passed away after a long illness. Upon hearing the news, the coach immediately drove to James's house. Entering James's small room, he witnessed a heartbreaking scene. James sat holding tightly onto his mother's photograph, crying uncontrollably. The room became chaotic and disordered. James kept repeating the words his mother used to say. "This is my mom. Mom said we played football really well. Mom said I'm a good person." He continued repeating those sentences endlessly, calling out for his mother repeatedly. The coach approached James. Without saying much, he simply embraced him tightly.
as though holding his own son. Silence filled the small room. That night felt endlessly long and painfully lonely. Driving back home afterwards, the coach finally opened up to his daughter. He told her a painful memory he had kept hidden for many years. When he was 12, he had to wake up very early every day to deliver newspapers. One morning, passing by a house, he heard strange noises coming from inside. Curiosity overcame him. He peeked through a gap in the door. Inside, he saw a boy his own age trapped behind an iron fence. The boy's eyes begged silently for help, but he did nothing. Day after day, he continued passing that house, hearing the same silent calls. Yet he never once entered to help. Then one day, the house became completely silent. No more sounds. The boy had disappeared forever. It became an enduring wound in his heart, a guilt that never faded. Helping James today was his way of redeeming that past mistake. Shortly after James's mother passed away, the school administration once again called an urgent meeting with the coach. They announced, after careful investigation, James had previously caused numerous problems. He had accidentally damaged property, had caused panic in the girls' locker room. These incidents showed James could lose control at any time.
The administration stated firmly, with James's mother now gone, no one remained to manage him. The best solution was placing James in a social welfare facility. According to them, it was the most appropriate place given his current condition. But the coach firmly shook his head. He sternly said, "If you expel James now, it would be no different than killing him." Faced with the coach's determination, the administrators couldn't argue further. They temporarily backed down. But the coach clearly knew who was behind all this. He was almost certain it was Johnny's father. He decided to confront him directly. Standing before the coach, Johnny's father admitted everything, yet showed no remorse whatsoever. He brazenly declared, "I just want my son to perform better. The team will stabilize and achieve more victories once James is gone." The coach didn't wish to waste time arguing. He knew he could never persuade someone so stubborn. Rather than engaging in pointless arguments, he devoted all his remaining energy and attention to James. Seeing James try hard to smile despite recently losing his mother, the coach decided he would teach James how to write his own name. James awkwardly held the pen, trying to scribble round shapes resembling radio waves. The coach smiled proudly, gently praising him. "You did it! Well done, James!" He sat for a long time, carefully filling half a sheet of paper with strange symbols. He then wrapped the sheet carefully with his beloved radio as a small gift. James gave the gift to Johnny, saying nothing more, only hoping to comfort Johnny after hearing he'd been suspended from playing due to his earlier mistake. Johnny couldn't read the symbols James had written, but he clearly felt the sincerity behind that small gift. Silently, Johnny thought about everything he'd done to James, the harsh words, the cruel pranks. In his heart arose deep remorse. Sometime later, Johnny was permitted by the coach to return to play, but this time, he no longer played just for himself. Johnny began cooperating better with his teammates. He learned to encourage others. He willingly passed the ball, allowing teammates to score together. Johnny's playing style completely changed, and the entire team grew stronger as a result. Yet, the better the team performed, the angrier Johnny's father became. Once again, he approached the principal to exert pressure. He strongly insisted that without James's presence, his son and the entire team would have played much better. This time, he didn't come alone. He brought along other parents, all opposing James's continued presence on the team. Ultimately, a large meeting was organized between the administration and all the parents. The coach entered the room accompanied by his wife and daughter, his gaze stern, his voice calm yet clear. He spoke slowly. "I know there are people here who don't want James to remain on the team, but I want you to reconsider carefully. Is James truly the person you imagine him to be?" He looked around the room, continuing, "Whenever players lose spirit, James is always the one stepping up, comforting and encouraging them. When the team trains intensely, James willingly endures collisions intended for others. We haven't been teaching James. Rather, James is the one teaching all of us valuable lessons about kindness and sincerity." The coach paused, looking directly at everyone present,
speaking decisively. "If you remain determined to expel James, then I will resign immediately." Without waiting for any responses, he stood up, taking his wife and daughter with him as he exited the meeting room. As the door closed behind him, the entire room fell into stunned silence. All parents in the room were deeply shocked by the coach's statement. They trusted him. They respected him. Now, no one had imagined he'd willingly abandon everything to protect someone like James, someone whom they'd believed held no value. No one could deny the coach's dedication to the team and the school. His willingness to resign wasn't impulsive. It clearly demonstrated just how important James's presence was to him. Sometime later, the school held its graduation ceremony for seniors. Before the ceremony began, Johnny personally sought out James. He handed James a small gift. It was his cherished football jersey. Johnny gave it directly to James. Without needing to say much, Johnny's sincere eyes spoke clearly. For the first time, Johnny genuinely recognized James as a true friend, standing proudly on stage like an official student. Before all the teachers and students, the principal stepped forward beside James. He declared clearly and decisively, as long as James wished to stay, this school would forever remain his home. James became so emotional he couldn't control his tears. He rushed forward, hugging the principal tightly. James's sincere embrace moved everyone present deeply. At that moment, it felt like a child finally receiving the recognition he'd longed for his entire life. Time quietly passed by. More than 30 years later, James was still at the same school. He had become the head coach of the high school football team. Though James was now over 50 years old, he maintained his habit of standing on the field every day, shouting familiar cheers, passionately encouraging his students with the same enthusiasm and innocence as always. He regularly kept in contact with the coach who had changed his life. Between them, it was no longer just the bond of a teacher and a student. Instead, it was a deep friendship, a true family bond. Two individuals who had once stood alone in life, eventually finding one another.